So let's quickly talk about test-driven development and just testing in general. And obviously, I'm talking about automated testing, right? So if you are building an application in a, in a general situation, you would end up creating. You'll just write the code base, right? You will write. Let's say you are writing an application that uploads. Let it say download something from client server. Okay, so you would create a class, you would define download method, you would probably define a method, another method to say set some configurations like URL, where to download the file from, and this is what you would generally do. You would write the logic, and then you would probably open it in a browser, or maybe you have this as an API. You would call with from Postman or something like that, and so this is the general approach for application development, right? You write your class, you pull the dependencies, you um, invoke methods in that class, and yeah, maybe kind of see if everything is working using Postman. Maybe you echo stuff on the page, I don't know, but that's the general flow. And then what you can do, you can just create a unit test and then start testing each method that's public, or whatever, just test whatever you can in that class. So you might want to test a method um, that sets the URL just to make sure if that property exists, by invoking that method with some parameter. And then you would check if the another method, for example, get URL, it returns the data. So you can start testing your application like this slowly. Then you can obviously test the download method, and the other methods that are there, and then assert whether a method returns the correct value, boolean, strings, array, whatever. You assert that, and then you kind of slowly start to test other parts of the application, right? Well, that's one approach. That's how a lot of people build websites. That is not test driven development. Now, test driven development, to put it very simply, works in a similar way, but you kind of write the test first. In first situation, we wrote the class and all the methods and everything, right? In this situation, we would write the test first. So, for example, we might write a test like um, test that something like this: test that a file can be downloaded. So we might write a test like that. So you would define the test, and at that point we have no logic, so test would not work, obviously, right? So this is what we're doing. We're letting test drive our logic. So we'll hit the enter, and the test is obviously gonna fail, right? Because, well, it'll fail because it's not even asserting anything, but it'll kind of fail. It won't do nothing. Why? Well, because you don't even have download class, you don't have the methods and all that stuff. So you would go back and you would write download class, right? You would have created your download class, and you import that class in your test. You run the test again. For example, maybe something like test download method returns status success. You test that, then you realize, oh, the test will tell you that download method doesn't have a body. It's not returning what you expect it to return. So you're like, okay, what do we do now? Then you go back to the download method and you define the body. Okay, maybe it's making some database calls or something like that, right? So this is how you kind of let the test drive the application. Then you would go back to the database, download XML, you would define some queries, or you define some other logic, and you would hit the test again. It would keep failing, but it'll keep giving you information. It'll keep telling you this is missing, that is missing, that's what you should do. Okay, so it's like a reverse approach. You write a test, you run the test says, oh, everything's failing, nothing is working. Then you go into your code and make everything work. Now, not everything, maybe some things will still fail, but slowly as you build up, the things are gonna pass more and more. Eventually everything will pass. That's the aim. So that's test driven development, and basically this is the whole buzz about TDD. Essentially this is how it works. There's nothing more absolutely compared to normal development versus TDD. TDD is something that you can kind of start. You start with, when you're building a new project, you start with TDD. So because you start writing the test and you assert things to check if things work or not, and then you write your logic. But on the other hand, if you want to just write code, just write tests, you can kind of write tests for existing code base, right? Because the logic has already been written, you're not doing TDD, test-driven development. The code is already there. Your tests are not driving your logic anymore. The logic is already there, and you can just go in and write uh, tests where you can for the methods that are already there. So there is two kind of different ways to look at it. There is test driven development, and there is just writing tests in general. And I think company use both approaches. There is no like silver bullet that if you use test driven development, your code base is gonna be more polished. It's gonna have better quality. It's gonna have less bugs and all that. That's not true. But yeah, if you do make errors in some places and all that, and you have tests written, whether it's through test driven development or you just have tests in general, it'll pick the errors and issues, even logical issues. So yeah, that's what test driven development is. I'll catch you guys next time.